Hey guys, welcome back to the Daily Dose. We're back at it again. Day number 37 up in here. We're chugging along. We're still working our way slowly but surely through the book of Leviticus, and we are still in those Psalms every day, right? Don't forget the Psalms. So today we're going to be looking at out of Leviticus chapters 21, 22, and 23. We're also looking at Psalm 37. So let's go ahead and just jump right on into our summary today. We talk about, or we read about, I should say, quite a few things today. We start off looking at the rules for the priests. Now remember, the priests were supposed to be Aaron's descendants. They were the ones, the Levites, that were called out of the people to be a holy priesthood to the Lord. So the priests are the ones that are responsible for taking care of the tabernacle and for basically being mediators between the Israelites and God. It talks about unacceptable sacrifices which are not acceptable to the Lord for various reasons. And then it talks about the appointed festivals, or they also call these assemblies. And there's a handful of them. The first thing that it talks about that falls under this category is the Sabbath, just in general. It kind of talks about the Sabbath day. It talks about the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And I'll touch on each one of these a little bit more once we get through the basic summary. It talks about the offering of first fruits, the Festival of Weeks, the Festival of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and the Festival of Tabernacles. So, and like I said, I'll just touch on each one of these briefly and just give you guys a few points of interest, a few little notations here. So for the Sabbath was supposed to be the day of rest, right? So the seventh day of the week was supposed to be a day of rest because on the seventh day God rested, right? So he commanded the Israelites to rest. What that meant is there was no work to be done. And it was kind of a day for them to be able to recharge. And I know actually a pretty good number of people today. Now, the Sabbath hasn't been like specifically commanded in the New Testament as one of the things that we need to continue to do, but it's a very good idea, especially when we live in such a busy time, when we have smartphones and the internet and the communication is instantaneous. It can be so easy to just get wrapped up in work or in family or friend drama or in all kinds of stuff on our days off. Now, I'm not saying that we need to sit home and do absolutely nothing, but I think it is a good practice, especially for families, to just take one day a week and block out at least a significant section of time. Put up boundaries around the family so that you can just rest and just kind of spend time with one another. So the next thing that we looked at was the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So this goes back to the Exodus, right? The last of the plagues that God sent on Egypt and the Pharaoh. The Passover represents when God was going to take the firstborn of everyone in Egypt, and the Israelites sacrificed the lamb, and they put the blood up over the doorpost, and so they were passed over. So they celebrate the Passover and have a feast of unleavened bread. And again, that was bread that did not have yeast in it, because in the scriptures, yeast is kind of a type or a picture, a metaphor for sin. So they had this feast of unleavened bread, kind of to commemorate the fact that they were in a hurry and they didn't have time to put yeast in and let their bread rise, so they had to cook it quickly. And this was the 14th day of the first month when this would happen, right? So Passover would be the first day of this kind of festival, and that commemorated, like we just said, the Exodus. Now, the next day after Passover, that's when the Feast of Unleavened Bread would begin. So they would eat unleavened bread for a period of 7 days. Now, the next thing that we read about here, as far as the festivals go, is the offering of first fruits. So this happened at harvest time, and what they were supposed to do is bring one sheath, like one kind of a stalk, a sheath of grain. They would take it to the priest. The priest would offer this grain to the Lord, and on that day they would also do a burnt offering and a grain offering, and they were not permitted to eat of the harvest before they offered this first fruits offering, right? So it's harvest time. They're getting ready to reap their harvest and bring in their crops, their grains, whatever it is that they're growing. And before they're allowed to eat or consume any of their harvest, they've got to take this first fruits offering and kind of celebrate this festival, so to speak, to the Lord. Moving on from the first fruits, the next thing that we read about is the festival of weeks, right? Weeks, just like a day in the week or a week in the month. So this happened 7 weeks after the first fruits offering happened, right? So they go through the offering of first fruits, that festival, and then 7 weeks go by. Then this festival of weeks starts. And then there's a series of offerings that are involved with that it talks about. But something else it mentions here in this section under the festival of weeks is it says that people who were farmers and crop growers, they were not supposed to harvest around the edge of their field. And the reason for that is that way anybody who was passing by, anybody who was poor or homeless and couldn't afford a meal, they could just walk by the edge of this field and just pluck a few things and, at least have a little bit of snack, a little bit of food to eat. And there's some, a few times later in the Bible where there's some kind of cool things that happen when somebody is going around trying to just eat around, the edge. They call it gleaning, eating around the edge of this field, just gleaning little bits and pieces here to eat. So we'll get it. It's quite a few books away. It's not coming up real soon, but we'll get to that, and I'll point that out when we do get there. After that, we move on to the Festival of Trumpets. This would be the first day of the 7th month. And because it's the 7th month, I guess that there would be a kind of a special Sabbath that they would have. And there would also be a food offering involved. Okay. And next we read about the Day of Atonement. This was the 10th day of the 7th month. And for the Day of Atonement, there was also a food offering. And they also talk about having a special day of rest that's involved with this festival. And the last thing that they mention is the Festival of Tabernacles. So this was the 15th day of the 7th month. So these last three are all kind of occurring like one right after the other. So this Festival of Tabernacles, this was 15th day of the 7th month. It would last for 7 days, be a full week long. The first day of this 7-day period would be a Sabbath, a day of rest. And then on the 8th day, there would also be a Sabbath time, a day of rest, and there would be a food offering given there. So that's just kind of a very brief overview of these different festivals that we talked about today. Sometimes they're called assemblies. So if you want to learn more about those, if you got the internet, go Google it, look it up, find some commentaries, do a little bit of research on your own. I'm sure you'll find that edifying and enjoyable. But that's really all I've got for you guys for today. So again, thank you so much for being here. So glad I get to do this with y'all every day. And I pray that you guys will have a good day and that you will be blessed and that God will work in you, on you, and through you as you go about your day today. So until we meet again, friends, love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Deuces.